Have you ever wondered who you truly are? What if everything you believe you know about yourself, your memories, your thoughts, even your identity, is merely an illusion? In this video, you will uncover the true essence of your being by transcending the limits of the ego and the stories you've learned to accept. Imagine living with greater ease, free from the burdens the self carries daily. What would your life look like if you could finally break through the inner barriers, preventing you from attaining peace, clarity, and fulfillment? Get ready for a transformation that starts now. Before diving into this transformative journey, I invite you to subscribe to this channel and like this video. This way, you won't miss any content that can help you uncover your true essence and live with greater clarity and wholeness. Together, let's explore the paths toward a lighter, more connected life. Picture yourself standing in front of a mirror, realizing that everything you believe yourself to be, your name, your memories, your experiences, is just a story you've learned to tell. How would you feel if you discovered that your sense of self is merely an illusion? This question, both unsettling and liberating, invites us to delve into the core of human identity. From the moment we are born, we are conditioned to believe in a distinct self. We are given a name, taught to recognize our reflection, and told a narrative about who we are and who we should be. But is this identity real, or is it merely a construct? Think about it. If you were born in another place, with a different culture, language, and name, who would you be? The answer reveals that our identity is shaped by external circumstances, a mold provided by the world, rather than an intrinsic essence. Consider the example of a wave in the ocean. At first glance, it seems independent. It rises, crashes onto the shore, and disappears. But is it truly separate from the ocean? Similarly, you are the awareness behind the experience, not merely a limited body or mind. As John Wheeler explains in his vision of non-duality, you are not what you think you are. You are not an individual seeking enlightenment. You are the very consciousness in which everything appears and disappears. Now, pause for a moment and ask yourself, who am I? Your first thought might be, I am a mother, a father, a professional, someone who dreams and struggles. But who is observing these thoughts? What if you could go beyond these answers, beyond the stories you tell yourself? Imagine holding a glass of water. You might believe that the water in the glass is separate from the ocean, but when you pour it back into the sea, where does the glass end and the ocean begin? The illusion of separation is what traps us. When we believe we are only this self, we spend our lives defending it, fearing its loss, and feeding it with successes and failures. Here's a practical reflection. Think of a time when you felt intense anger or joy. These emotions, so real in the moment, eventually fade. But who was the observer of those emotions? Who was aware of the experience even as it disappeared? That awareness, that presence, is who you truly are, something unchanging beyond time and circumstances. If this idea feels uncomfortable, it's because it challenges everything we've been taught to believe. Yet, by questioning this constructed identity, you open the door to discovering something deeper and truer. So ask yourself this: what if I am not the story I've been told? What if I am the infinite ocean, not just the fleeting wave? This shift in perspective can mark the beginning of a transformative journey toward uncovering your true essence. Take a moment to consider the phrase, I am. It's one of the simplest and most fundamental statements we can make. But what does it truly mean? Who or what is this I that we all carry within us? At first glance, it seems obvious that we are our bodies, our memories, or even our thoughts. But is that really the case? Think about your body. It feels solid and permanent, yet science tells us this impression is an illusion. Every cell in your body is constantly renewing. The skin you had 10 years ago no longer exists. Your bones, tissues, and even your brain have changed over time. If the body you have today is not the same as the one you had 10 years ago, how can you say it is truly you? Now turn your attention to your thoughts. They come and go, like clouds in the sky. One moment you're thinking about a project to complete, the next about what you'll eat tonight. If these thoughts are so fleeting, how can they define who you are? If you can observe a thought as it arises and disappears, it means you are not that thought. You are the observer. And what about emotions? Recall a moment when you felt intense fear or joy. Those emotions seemed to consume you entirely, but they eventually faded. The anger that felt so real yesterday is no longer present today. So, who or what remains constant as these emotions come and go? Imagine holding a handful of sand on the beach. The tighter you try to grip it, the more the grains slip through your fingers. Similarly, the more we try to cling to a fixed identity, whether it's I am smart, I am an anxious person, or I am a failure, the more elusive that identity becomes. The self we believe we are is not solid. It is fluid, dynamic, and ever-changing. Here's an even deeper insight. What if this self you believe in is merely a mental construct? As John Wheeler describes, it is a story we tell ourselves. This story consists of memories from the past and projections into the future. But if you look closely, you'll see that the past is just a memory in the present moment, and the future is only an idea that has yet to occur. The only moment that truly exists is now. So ask yourself, if I am not my body, my thoughts, or my emotions, who am I? This question doesn't have an easy answer, and that's okay. The true answer is not something you can articulate with words, but something you can feel. It is the silent space that observes it all, the pure, unchanging awareness that is always present. Close your eyes for a moment and feel this presence. It does not depend on what you do, think, or feel. It's like the space in a room, unchanged, whether it's filled with objects or empty. This is your true nature, limitless, beyond time and space. Let this idea sink in. The self you've defended, feared losing and nourished, is merely a construct. Behind this construct lies something far greater, more expansive and freer than you've ever imagined. Imagine waking up one morning under a clear, sunny sky. You look up and notice a few clouds drifting by, some large and dense, others small and light. Yet none of them change the nature of the sky itself. The sky remains open, infinite and unaltered, no matter the clouds that pass through it. In the same way, your consciousness is like the sky, constant and ever-present, while thoughts, emotions and experiences pass through it like fleeting clouds. But what is consciousness? It is the ever-present awareness that observes everything. Whether you are happy, sad, anxious or calm, there is something within you that is aware of those emotions. This awareness does not change, even as everything else is in constant flux. Consciousness has no form, yet it is the foundation of all that you experience. To better understand, think of the space within a room. Fill it with furniture, and the space remains. Remove all the objects, and the space is still there. It is unaffected by what is inside or outside the room. Your consciousness is like this space. It is not influenced by the experiences that arise within it. Now consider your thoughts. One moment, you're reflecting on a project. The next, you're thinking about what you'll have for dinner. But who is observing these thoughts? If you can perceive a thought, then you cannot be that thought. You are the observer, the awareness that notices thoughts as they come and go. This is the secret. Consciousness is not something you possess. It is who you truly are. Think about moments of silence in your life. Perhaps you've watched a sunset or spent a quiet moment in nature, not thinking about anything in particular. In those instances, you were not busy defining, judging, or analyzing. You were simply there. That pure presence is your true essence. Take a moment to ask yourself, what happens if I stop identifying with my thoughts and emotions? You might notice an immediate sense of freedom. For example, when you feel anger, you often think, I am angry. But if you observe the anger as a phenomenon, like a cloud in the sky, it loses its power over you. John Wheeler reminds us that consciousness is like the space in a room. It is ever present and untouched by the objects that come and go within it. When you realize that you are not the thoughts that arise, but the awareness in which they appear, your perspective changes dramatically. You stop clinging to stories and begin living more lightly and fully in the present. Here's a question for reflection. What would you change in your life if you allowed yourself to simply be consciousness? Without labels, without judgments, just the space that perceives everything. You might discover that there is no longer a need to defend or maintain a separate self. Instead, you become free to simply live. Consider this final metaphor. The flame of a candle illuminates everything around it, but does not need to light itself. Your consciousness is like that flame. It perceives everything but does not need to be perceived. It simply is. By understanding this, you realize that you already have everything you need, a pure, unchanging, infinite awareness. Close your eyes for a moment and think about this phrase, I am me. It seems like an undeniable truth, doesn't it? This simple statement, which seems to define our existence, is what we call the ego. But what if I told you that the ego isn't real, that it's merely a construct, an idea we've created and sustained throughout our lives? From childhood, we learn to build a self based on our experiences, beliefs, and memories. The ego is that inner voice narrating every moment. I accomplished this. I need to achieve that. Am I good enough? It's as though a character within us insists on taking the lead role. But is this character truly who we are? Let's ask a simple question. Where is the ego? Is it in your head, in your heart, somewhere in your body? When you try to locate it, you realize it has no physical form. It isn't something you can touch or see. It is simply a collection of thoughts that arise and dissipate. Now think about times when you feel anxious or uncertain. The ego immediately takes over, saying, I'm not good enough, or I can't handle this. But if you observe carefully, you'll see that these are just stories the ego tells. The ego is like an actor in a film, convinced that the entire plot revolves around it. But you, as the observer, can choose not to believe its performance. Imagine a whirlpool in a river. It seems distinct, with its own shape and movement. But if you look closely, you'll see that the whirlpool is nothing more than moving water, a part of the river that cannot be separated. The ego is like that whirlpool. It appears solid and separate, but is just a temporary flow of thoughts within consciousness. Here's a powerful idea. The ego exists only because we believe in it. John Wheeler describes it as a shadow, convincing but lacking substance. When you stop believing the ego's stories, it loses its power. This doesn't mean you stop functioning or lose your individuality. On the contrary, you begin to live more lightly and connectedly, free from the constant burden of proving or defending who you think you are. Take a moment now and ask yourself, who is feeling this emotion? Who is thinking these thoughts? You might realize that there is no concrete me there, only thoughts and sensations arising within awareness. This is the first step toward breaking the illusion of the ego. Imagine watching a captivating film. During the screening, you're so absorbed that you forget it's just a movie. The ego is like that film. It convinces you that it's the main character, but in reality, you're simply the observer. When you remember this, the weight of having to be someone disappears. John Wheeler also reminds us that there's no need to fight the ego or try to destroy it. You only need to see it for what it is, a mental construct. When you do this, something extraordinary happens. You no longer have to carry the burden of your story or cling to the definitions the ego creates. Freedom arises naturally. Ask yourself, what would your life look like without the weight of defending who you are? Without the fear of failure, the need to please, or the constant comparisons with others? This freedom is possible, and it all begins with the simple act of observing rather than blindly believing the ego. Like the whirlpool returning to the river, you can return to the consciousness that has always been there, silent and unchanging. The ego may be part of the experience, but it does not define who you are. And by seeing this clearly, you become free to live without fear, guilt, or the limitations of the self. Imagine a day when everything in your life flows harmoniously. Decisions come effortlessly, challenges are met with serenity, and you feel deeply connected to everything around you. It sounds like a dream, doesn't it? Yet, this is not an unreachable illusion. It is the reality of those who live beyond the illusion of a separate self. For most of us, life feels like a constant struggle, defending who we are, proving our worth, achieving something. But who is this self that requires so much effort? By beginning to ask this question, you realize that much of your suffering comes from the burden of maintaining this identity. The self that says, I must succeed or I must please others, is in reality a mental construct, not a true necessity. Now think of a river. It doesn't force itself to flow. It simply follows its course, moving around stones, trees, and obstacles, never ceasing to advance. Living beyond the self is like being that river. It means allowing life to flow naturally, without the need for control or resistance. But what does it mean to live without the self? It doesn't mean ignoring your individuality or responsibilities. On the contrary, it means recognizing that the self you try to protect is just an idea, while the consciousness you truly are is free to live life more fully. Consider this: your heart beats, your lungs breathe, your cells regenerate, all without a self being in charge. In the same way, life can unfold without the weight of a separate identity. Apply this to a real-life situation. Think about the last time you had to make a difficult decision. Perhaps you analyzed the pros and cons, feeling the pressure of having to handle it all. Now imagine that decision arising naturally, like a wave crashing onto the shore. Living beyond the self means allowing decisions to emerge from the present moment without the need for rigid control. John Wheeler explains that the idea of the self is just a habit, a learned condition. Just as we learn to walk or talk, we learn to believe we are this separate self. But by realizing that life doesn't depend on this belief, you discover immense freedom. Life continues, actions, decisions, emotions, but without the weight of a central self trying to control everything. Think also about the people around you. How often does the self interfere in your relationships? Perhaps you fear rejection or want to be perceived in a certain way. When the self dissolves, these barriers disappear too. You become more open, more compassionate, because there's no self to defend. Pause now and ask yourself, what would my life look like without the weight of being someone? Without the fear of failure, the need to please, or the constant comparisons with others? This is the essence of living beyond the self, a life of flow without resistance, where every moment is lived fully. Consider this reflection. When you look at the sky, do you try to control it? Number. You simply observe and appreciate its vastness. In the same way, life can be lived without control, but with full awareness. The self doesn't need to lead, it never did. So let the self rest. Allow yourself to flow like the river, light and natural. Living beyond the self is not only possible, it is your true nature. And in living this way, you discover that the entire world is connected to you because there has never been any separation. Imagine yourself in a dark room. For years you've tried rearranging the furniture, adjusting the space, yet the darkness persists. Then one day, you light a candle, and everything becomes clear. The journey to awareness is like that simple gesture. It's not about adding something to your life, but illuminating what has always been present. For many, the search for truth begins with doubt. Questions like, who am I? Or what is the purpose of my existence? Can feel uncomfortable, even unsettling. But these doubts are not enemies. They are invitations to explore something deeper. When you allow yourself to question, what once seemed solid begins to dissolve, revealing a far greater truth. John Wheeler offers a powerful analogy. Imagine a whirlpool in a river. It seems to have a distinct shape, something identifiable as separate. But upon closer inspection, you realize that the whirlpool is merely the movement of water, an inseparable part of the river itself. Similarly, the self you believe yourself to be is just a flow of life, manifesting temporarily. Now ask yourself this question: if the self isn't real, who is living my life? This is a common question, but it stems from a misunderstanding. We think we need a self to function, when in reality, life unfolds independently of this identity. Your heart beats, you breathe, your thoughts arise, all without a self in control. Seeing this clearly reveals that awareness is what truly guides everything. Think of a time when you had to make a difficult decision. Perhaps you believed everything depended on you, that the outcome was solely your responsibility. But imagine that decision emerging naturally, like a wave reaching the shore. Living through awareness means allowing life to unfold effortlessly, without the need for control. Many wonder, if I'm not this self, does my life still have meaning? This question reflects our conditioning to believe we must be someone or achieve something to have value. But consider the sun. It makes no effort to shine, yet its light sustains life. Similarly, your awareness needs no justification. It is the foundation of all that you experience, and that is enough. A common fear is losing one's humanity by transcending the self. Many believe living without ego makes you cold or detached, yet the opposite is true. By letting go of the illusion of a separate self, you become more open, more compassionate. Without the constant need to protect or defend an identity, you can connect deeply with others. Pause and observe. Your thoughts come and go, your emotions rise and fall, yet something remains constant: the awareness observing it all. This awareness does not need to be found or created. It is already there, waiting to be recognized. Think of a moment when you were silent, simply observing the world around you. Perhaps it was during a sunset or while listening to the rain. In those moments, you weren't busy defining or analyzing. You were simply present, aware. That is the journey to awareness, returning to what has always been there. Allow yourself to rest in this presence. There is nothing to achieve, nothing to prove. You are already the awareness you seek. When you realize this, the search ends and life becomes a natural flow, filled with clarity and peace. Imagine carrying a backpack filled with stones. Each stone represents a worry, a thought, or an emotion you believe is essential. Now imagine the relief of setting that backpack down and continuing your journey without the weight. Practical exercises for liberation are designed to help you put down this burden and rediscover the lightness of simply being yourself. The first practice is simple yet powerful. Observing your thoughts. Sit comfortably and close your eyes. Allow your thoughts to come and go without judgment or control. Imagine yourself as someone sitting by a river, watching leaves float by. Each thought is a leaf. You don't need to grab them, just observe them passing. Ask yourself, where do these thoughts come from? And where do they go? You'll notice that thoughts arise spontaneously and disappear just as easily. This act of observation breaks the cycle of identification. You are not your thoughts. You are the one observing them. Another practical exercise is to focus on your breathing. Throughout the day, take a few moments to notice the air entering and leaving your lungs. Don't try to alter or control your breath, just observe it. This practice brings you into the present moment and reminds you of a profound truth. Breathing happens effortlessly, without the intervention of a self. It reflects the natural flow of life. Consider how you react to intense emotions like anger or fear. When these emotions arise, we tend to react immediately, identifying with them. I am angry or I am afraid. But what if you changed your approach? The next time a strong emotion arises, ask yourself, where is this emotion located? Is it in my body, in my mind, or is it just a fleeting sensation? Imagine a storm in the sky. It may be intense, with lightning and thunder, but it eventually dissipates. The sky itself remains unchanged. Your emotions are like that storm, while you are the sky. When you stop identifying with your emotions and simply observe them, they lose their grip on you. Another exercise is to fully engage in the present moment. We are often trapped in the past or preoccupied with the future, forgetting what is happening here and now. During the day, choose a simple task, like washing dishes or walking, and do it with total attention. Notice every detail. The feeling of water on your hands, the sound of your steps on the ground. This practice, known as mindfulness, dissolves the self always attached to stories and judgments. Here's a question for you. How would my life change if I stopped taking everything personally? Imagine someone criticizing you. Normally the ego reacts, creating conflict and tension. But if you realize there is no self to defend, the criticism loses its impact. It becomes just another event, like a leaf falling from a tree. John Wheeler reminds us that the key to liberation is not effort, but perception. It's not about battling the ego or trying to suppress negative thoughts. It's simply about seeing things as they are. When you realize the self is a construct, the weight disappears and life flows naturally. Consider this. At every moment, you have the choice to identify with your thoughts and emotions or to simply observe them. This choice transforms your experience of life. No effort is required, only a shift in perspective. Finally, practice conscious gratitude. At the end of the day, take a moment to reflect on what you are grateful for. This soothes the mind and connects you to the presence and awareness that are always available. Start today. Choose one of these exercises and apply it to your life. You don't need to solve everything at once. Take it step by step. Each practice is an invitation to free yourself, live more lightly, and rediscover the freedom that has always been within you. Picture yourself standing before a vast ocean, observing the waves forming and dissolving on its surface. Some waves are large and imposing, others are small and barely noticeable, yet all share a fundamental truth. None are separate from the ocean. Waves are not independent entities, they are the ocean's very movement. This metaphor captures the essence of awareness. You are not a fleeting wave, but the infinite and eternal ocean. Throughout life, we are taught to see ourselves as small and separate, waves struggling to survive in an unpredictable ocean. We believe we are defined by our stories, emotions, and achievements. But what if all of that were merely a surface layer? And what if, at your core, you were the ocean itself, boundless and formless? Consider what it means to be limitless. This isn't something you must achieve or create. It is what you already are, but have forgotten. The awareness you are experiencing at this very moment, as you read these words, is the same awareness that has always been there, even before your first memories. It has no beginning or end. It is silent, yet full of life. It is the space in which everything happens, but is never altered by what occurs. Ask yourself, what if I weren't defined by the waves of my life? Think about moments of joy and sorrow, successes and failures. They come and go like waves on the ocean. But the ocean itself remains unchanged. And when you realize you are the ocean, there is no longer fear of loss or failure. There is no need to grasp or protect. You discover a freedom that has always been there. To make this more tangible, observe your breathing right now. You don't need to control it. It happens on its own. Life operates the same way. Actions, emotions, and thoughts arise and fade, like the natural movement of the ocean. When you stop trying to control everything, you begin to flow with life. This acceptance is not weakness. It is the deepest expression of strength and trust. Think also about your relationships. How often have you felt hurt or misunderstood because you believed yourself to be a wave separate from others? When you realize that everyone shares the same ocean of awareness, the barriers dissolve. You connect with others more deeply, without judgment or defensiveness. You recognize that at the most fundamental level, we are all one. John Wheeler reminds us that the search for truth ends when we realize we were never lost. The idea of being incomplete or insufficient is an illusion created by the ego. When this illusion fades, you realize you are already whole, already complete. There is nothing to achieve, nothing to add. You are already the ocean. Here's one final reflection. Imagine a drop of water falling from a leaf. It seems separate for a moment, but as soon as it touches the ground, it merges back into the whole. The drop was never truly separate. The separation was only a temporary appearance. The same is true for you. The idea of being a drop is an illusion. You have always been the ocean. What does this mean for your life? It means you no longer need to search for peace or happiness outside yourself. You are already that. Peace is not in the future. It is here and now, in the recognition of your true nature. We conclude with an invitation. Pause for a moment and simply be. Feel the space where there are no labels, no stories, no judgments. That space is your true essence. It does not depend on any external circumstances. It does not change. It is the infinite ocean of awareness that you have always been. The journey ends here, but in truth, it never began. For you have never been separate from the destination. You have always been home in the vast and eternal ocean of your true nature. Thank you for watching until the end. Your presence is essential for continuing to share content that transforms lives. Subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so you won't miss our upcoming videos. If this content resonated with you, like, comment, and share it. By doing so, you can help others find clarity, peace, and meaning in their lives. See you soon.